suspension component for an automobile. That was your invention. And we already represent Ford, and there's a direct, and maybe they're patenting stuff in that suspension component.
Okay.
As well.
Yeah.
That's what we call a subject matter conflict. So if you can give a general idea of what your invention is about, or kind of the space it's in, that will make it easier for us to run that conflicts check and kind of determine if we can proceed.
Well, I'm a coach by profession before I retired. So what I'm dealing with is something that has something to do with, of course, what it has to do with, let's just say getting in shape.
Okay. Is it software, or is this a hard, like a device or a machine or equipment?
It's a machine.
Okay.
Equipment, so to speak.
So like exercise equipment, kind of weightlifting, something along those lines.
It's equipment. It has to do with getting in shape. Yeah.
Okay.
Not a bike.
It's not okay. Yeah, I would say don't be afraid of saying a little more. So a little more detail without maybe telling me the whole story.
Well, it's going to the target audience is going to be for older people like myself.
Okay. And is it just a hardware device, or is there software component, control?
No software component to it.
No software component. Okay. So exercise device at a broad, high level. Okay, cool. Got it. So we'll, after the call, we'll go off and run our conflicts check just to make sure everything's clear in that regard. But I suspect it will be. That's a relatively niche kind of area. So probably
that's an area that you guys work with.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we have the competency to do it. I'm just saying that I don't think we have.
No, I mean, I'm saying, like you say, a conflict of matter, of subject matter. Is that something you guys already work with? Like, say, the bike back there behind you. People.
Yeah. I don't think that we do. Like, Bowflex is not a client, for example. So
yeah, right.
So yeah, I think I suspect that we're probably fine on the conflicts front. So the rest of what we need to talk about is just a little bit of kind of what the workflow looks like to prepare and file a patent application, the costs that are associated with that, and whether that all is what you are looking for. So
I've already had the architect to draw it up.
Okay, so you've got some figures.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've had it drawn up. I just need to find the manufacturer.
Okay. And so other than the architect, has this been shared or demonstrated or used in public at all?
No.
Okay, that's very good, because
between you, me, and my husband, and the architect, that's it. He is my nephew.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Typically, we like to file our patent applications, if possible, before any of those kind of public disclosures take place.
Oh, don't worry. I've done some things before where I've learned not to open my mouth about. I'm an inventor. I'll never get
Yeah. That's good. That's good. It makes our job easier and the timeline. So, yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to introduce myself, Matt. I got on the call late. I'm Brindetta Payne.
Mm-hmm. Nice to meet you.
I have a baby, so I do apologize.
You're the professor, right?
Understandable. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I do trademarks and copyright, but no idea about patents. And Marie was just such a blessing in the class. So this is how we are all connected. And Coach Brimmer is my former coach, as well as a longtime client. So she's very protective about her creativity and inventions. And so that's why the reluctance to share all information. So I'll be here guiding and explaining any legalese along the way.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Professor Payne, for passing my name along. I introduced Matt earlier. He's a partner at the firm, and I just joined on Tuesday, and so I needed to get him on. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, it sounds like our timeline is good. It's in our favor that you haven't disclosed the invention at all, which means we have some breathing room.
Professor Payne doesn't even know what it is.
Good. She'll have to attend the grand unveiling. So there's a couple different ways we can proceed. Because we're not in a super time crunch, we can just start off and prepare a full-blown non-provisional patent application. That's to contrast with a provisional patent application, which can be done for cheaper, but is not really a patent application. It's never going. So a provisional will never be examined. It will never even see the light of day unless you subsequently file a non-provisional. The best way to think about a provisional is it's a placeholder. It establishes your filing date, and usually we use them as a tool for cases where we don't have much time. You know, if an inventor or a company comes to us and says, "Hey, we've got a presentation tomorrow, and we're going to tell the world about this." Well, you can't write a non-provisional that fast, and so you just file your quick provisional to establish a filing date, knowing that within the next year you'll come back and file that subsequent non-provisional.
Okay, that makes sense.
When we have time on our side, though, when time's not the enemy, I think it's generally a good idea to either file a provisional that looks and feels a lot like a non-provisional, meaning it's a fully fleshed out, detailed explanation with some real claims that are similar to what we would ultimately want, or we just go ahead and file the non-provisional straight away. I think the cost in terms of attorney time to prepare what I call a full-blown provisional versus a non-provisional is roughly equal. So there's not much to be saved in terms of attorney time in one column versus the other. The only difference is that the filing fee, like the PTO filing fee for a provisional is quite cheap. I mean, I think it's on the order of maybe even less than $100 for a small entity. Whereas a non-provisional, it's like there's different components, but it's a search fee, examination fee, publication fee. Those add up for a small entity, if my memory is right, to be around $900 filing fees. Attorney time to prepare this is sort of variable. It depends on the complexity of the device or the equipment. If it's a relatively straightforward mechanical invention, I would ballpark between $8,000 and $10,000 of attorney time to draft the application. If it's very complex, if there's a lot of moving pieces and there's a lot of different parts or areas that might be inventive, what we kind of call embodiments. So we'd say, oh, this is one inventive embodiment, but then this other piece here, this gear, this gear over here, that could be inventive. It adds, but it doesn't scale like, I wouldn't say 2 embodiments is twice as expensive, right? A lot of what you do in that single embodiment basic draft gets reused, and so it doesn't go up by double. It just goes up a little bit because there will be time.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
So, in talking about this the attorney like research and all that. Okay, let's say that you research and you find something that's there like that. You still charge the fee, right?
Well, so no, and let's talk about that now, but segment it off. So what you're talking about is what we would call sort of a patentability search. And we don't do that as a matter of course, but we certainly do it in many cases. It's not the default, but it's something that we do often. And usually when I'm recommending a patentability search, it is because the client or the would-be applicant is not so sure what all is out there, right? Some of our very sophisticated clients who are like massive companies, their inventors know the space that they're working in so well that they know what all their competitors are doing, and they can say with some certainty, oh, yeah, nothing out there is like this. But I think that it's a good idea, particularly in this case, and usually with smaller companies or solo inventors, to perform kind of a knockout patentability search. It's a relatively inexpensive uh, endeavor. We contract the search out to a third party because they're much more efficient and I think thorough probably than one of us would be. So usually like a knockout patentability search will be on the order of $600 to $800 of this from the fee from the third party searcher. And we just pass that through. And then maybe an hour or two of attorney time to review the most relevant references, right? Typically, the report that we get back, it might have 20 references that the searcher has found. But really, like it's the top one or two where we think, okay, this is pretty close. We need to take a closer look. But we can do that relatively quickly. And yeah, if we get a hit in that search report and we look at it and say, oh my gosh, this is spot on. This is my invention, and they got there first. Then no, we don't have to proceed at all, and you don't spend that money for application grant. So it's kind of like an insurance policy, right? You spend a little bit of money to do the search up front, and if you get bad news, well, you've at least saved yourself from preparing and filing a patent application, only to find out once it gets examined that there's a prior art. You've got a prior art problem. Okay. And if the search comes back clear, then we have some peace of mind. And there's even a third outcome that's possible where we get some really relevant references back in the search, but we know that we still have some inventive aspects that aren't in those references. Well, now that can really inform our claim drafting. We draft claims now with this little bit of knowledge about what's out there, and so we can tailor our claims in a way that we're still claiming what's important, the inventive aspect, but maybe a little bit more narrowly than we would have otherwise, because we know that these references exist, and we need to be mindful of that when we're drafting our claims. So I think starting with the search is probably advisable in this case, it sounds like.
Yeah, I went on Google search patents, and I looked through them, and I didn't see anything, but that was my search.
Yeah, honestly, I love Google Patents. Its existence in the last, it's gotten so good, and it's gotten a lot better over the last several years. It's a really great tool. I still think that these search firms do a kind of even better job. They're such wizards with how they put together keywords and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Matt, I do have a question. You spoke about the timeline, and apologies for my camera being off, but I'm holding my kid. So the timeline. So from start to finish, if she wanted to engage your firm to do the patent search, and then you decide, okay, it's great, we don't see anything that could be a major conflict, and do the application start to finish, generally, how long does it take for her to get, is it called patent approval? I don't know anything about patent language, so I do.
Yeah. So let's discount the search. Let's just assume we've done the search and we're going to proceed. So we were told today, yep, go ahead and proceed. I would say we get the application drafted within about a month. That's not like one person working full time for a month. It's more that there's between back and forth and review and revise and that kind of stuff. I typically like to give it at least a month just to have some breathing room. So we get something filed. Let's just say October 1st. There's a huge backlog at the PTO. Different art units, so different like technology areas are more or less fast. But I say 18 months at a minimum before you even receive your first office action. So Rose, just for your information, what an office action is, I'd say 99 out of 100 patent applications are rejected before they're allowed. So it's very uncommon for you to get a notice of allowance on the claims as you file them. So an office action is a communication from the examiner that points out why they think your claims are not allowed. Usually it's because of prior art. So the examiner is going to do research. They find some prior art and they say, well, you've claimed your invention maybe a little broadly, so it reads almost prior art. And so then we respond to that. We can amend our claims to narrow them or to distinguish over the prior art. We can provide arguments. We do. There can be multiple office actions. Okay, so that's the next part, is that, you can respond to that first office action and get a notice of allowance. It can happen, but it's not guaranteed. There can be a second office action. Typically, in a great scenario, we always try to get something by the second office action, because at that point, costs increase. It's not our costs. After that second office action, if you want to continue fighting, you have to file what's called a request for continued examination, and that has there's a fee associated with that for the PTO. So anyway, the point is, even if you say we'll get that first office action quickly, 18 months, maybe add another year, so now you're at 30 months, 2.5 years. I'd say that would be a compact prosecution. So I know it seems like that's a long time, but
I could be dead by then.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that?
I could be dead by then.
Yeah. So in our world, that would be a relatively compact life cycle. There are ways to speed it up, but unsurprisingly, it comes down to dollars. You can file what's called a request for track 1 prioritized examination, but the fee it's large. It's $4,000 for a large entity, I think. So when I say large entity, small entity, you qualify as a small entity. You might actually qualify as a micro entity, which is great because that takes fees way down. But the track 1 request is expensive no matter what. And all track 1 does is it guarantees that you get that first office action certainly within a year. It might be 6 months, or maybe that's just my experience. I think they guarantee it within a year, but I have been filing a lot more track 1 applications for a particular client recently, and we get office actions fast for sure. But is it worth the money? I don't know. It's a harder,
Yeah.
Professor Payne, we talked about how much longer it takes to get the patent stuff going versus trademarks and copyrights in our class, if you recall.
Yes. That's a lot longer than a trademark.
Exactly.
And I will say, I do a decent chunk of trademark work myself, and recently I've been having some pretty lengthy. I've been well over a year before I get an office action, and that seems long to me. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So.
Okay, so when she discusses, if she decides to engage, when she discusses the engagement, after she pays the initial retainer, at what point in your experience do you come back and say, hey, look, make a decision. Are we going to keep fighting, or this is not worth it?
That will be an ongoing discussion at each office action.
Okay.
So let's say, this is an unlikely scenario, but let's say that we do the search and somehow it comes back clear as day. And we think, great, we have, our invention is novel, there's no prior art, let's proceed. And somehow the patent examiner finds something. The reason I say that's unlikely is because I think the search firms probably do a better job than most examiners. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the examiner finds something, and we get the first office action, we see the reference, and think, golly, that's it, that's our invention. Well, then maybe you make the hard decision early and say, well, this is unfortunate, but when you have prior art that's like right on top of your invention, there is only so much you can do. And then some of it comes down to how easy or hard the examiner is. It's not science. It's more art, figuring that out. If they're willing to play ball, there are plenty of great, helpful examiners out there who are not trying to be the bad guy, who just want to do an honest job and help an applicant who has an invention they think is novel get their patent. So My point is that it's just kind of, we take a bit of a wait and see approach. If you have an examiner that's extremely dug in, and they're just not budging, and they're really not willing to engage or have productive conversations about the application, there's an appeal option. So after a final office action, which is that second one we talked about, one thing you can do is file the request for continued examination, which basically means we're going to keep fighting with the examiner. You can also file a notice of appeal, which essentially takes it out of the examiner's hands. It goes up to a three judge panel at the PTAB, Patent Trial and Appeal Board, and that can be effective. It takes a lot of time, and there's cost, of course. But if you have an examiner that's just not working with you, and you're convinced that they're wrong, right? I mean, I've been doing this for long enough now where I know. I know sometimes it's like, hey, the examiner has a pretty good point, and I'm not going to. I won't sugarcoat that to you just to try to keep fighting and generating fees. We don't do that. If I think the examiner is solid in their position, we're going to let you know, because we don't like throwing good money at that. So I hope that helps.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so her first step, she says she has a drawing. Her first step is to, if she decides to go ahead and order the patentability search. Is that what you advise?
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a good way to go here. Because if it does come back with something that gives us pause, we can save a lot of money by just saying, okay, well, it was a great idea, but maybe not patentable. Save the filing, save the preparation. Yeah.
Now, here's a question. You mentioned something. So if it's not patentable, can she still move forward with manufacturing?
Yeah, great. That's a great question. Everything in this world of the law, it depends.
Right.
So we're talking about a patentability search. The other side of the coin. So patentability asks the question: is there any prior art out there that includes the features that I would like to claim? Okay. The other side of the coin is an infringement search, and that's asking the question: is there any valid, alive, meaning it hasn't expired, patent that claims features that are in my device or in my piece of equipment? Infringement searches are, especially with a more complex mechanical device, infringement searches can be, it's a bigger lift. Okay. It's not, I don't think it's prohibitive, but I will say a lot of people choose to take the wait and see approach. You know what? I'm going to press forward, and I don't think that there's any patents out there on this. And if so, they can come knocking if they want. They can write their cease and desist letter, and we can assess at that time. To take a step back, another good thing that I haven't mentioned, it's a good thing to keep in mind, is that a patent doesn't give you the right to make your invention. It gives you the right to exclude others from doing it. So even if you got a patent, you could go and produce your device, and it could still infringe someone else's patent. That's possible. That's a possible outcome. So in some sense, they're almost independent tracks, right? Whether we get a patent, that bears on our ability to tell Bowflex, hey, you have to stop making this thing that's a copy of mine because I have a patent. Whether we get our patent or not, though, Bowflex can always come to us and say, look, we've got this patent that issued back in 2015, and it claims this gear part of your device. So your little gear mechanism that we have a patent on. And that's independent of whether we get on a patent. So I think, it depends on the industry. I think when it's pure software, I typically am telling people, just go ahead and do it, because you've already done the R&D, you've already written code, your app is basically functioning. You've spent the money to build the thing. Put it out there and see. If someone writes you a letter, a nastygram, take that in stride and see what you can do with it. Now, in this realm where maybe the cost to prototype and produce is quite higher, I think that's when, maybe the infringement search starts to have a little bit more value, because it's not so easy just to turn on a switch and now you've deployed your app to 1,000 people, right? That's easy. Making, manufacturing 1,000 widgets is more involved. It's more involved, not just in time, but really cost, right? So if that's the decision, is like, well, we didn't get our patent, but we still are going to proceed and try to make this thing commercially viable. I think an infringement search can add some value, at least in giving peace of mind. And then there's one other thing I'll mention is that I said these things are independent, but they're also related, right? Like, we could see prior art during prosecution of our own patent. Something comes in that first office action, and we think, gosh, like this is scary. Not because we can't claim around it, but because it's claim. We're seeing something now claiming an invention that we know is part of what we're doing. So you can learn about infringement risks during prosecution of your own patent. So that's why I say two sides of the same coin. They're intertwined, and we basically, what we do on our end is we start building this knowledge base of prior art that's out there, and then some of that prior art will become a patent itself, and now we know that, and so we can start kind of synthesizing all these different sources of patent information to then understand, what does the landscape look like? What are our infringement risks? What's our likelihood of attaining a patent ourselves? So I know that's kind of a long-winded explanation.
No, but
it makes great sense to me.
One more thing. I'm sorry to cut you off, Ms. Brimmer, Coach Brimmer. One more thing, if because again, she is concerned about confidentiality in your engagement agreements. Do you guys include NDAs when an inventor engages the firm to represent?
That's funny. I sent out an engagement agreement yesterday. I don't think that it's not your classic NDA, but it's
language synonymous to it.
It's just simple attorney-client privilege.
Okay.
I think I would probably lose my license if I shared a client's invention. Okay. So that's what's on the line for me. So we don't do that.
Okay. I have to ask so I can explain to her.
But you don't sign anything saying that you won't do that, right?
Right, except my professional life.
A lot of people lost their law license.
Yeah,
I know you went to school for way too long to give that up, but yeah.
I've got too much riding on this still.
All right.
I feel like the ones that lose their law license are these old curmudgeonly guys who they've got nothing to lose.
Yeah, okay. All right. I think I have my questions answered. I'm going to speak to Professor Payne, and she will direct me.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the good thing of having people like her.
Yes.
Trusted advisors are very important in all manner of situations.
Especially when they know they're going to get in trouble if they don't do right.
Right.
Well, it was a pleasure meeting everyone, meeting you, Matt. Good to see you again, Fareed.
You too.
And we will have a discussion and follow up.
Sounds great.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Let us know if any other questions pop up. Thank you guys.
All right. Thank y'all.
Bye.
Bye.